Welcome to the program. The Kenyan Opposition CORD has just concluded the State of the Nation address, countering the recent address given by President Uhuru Kenyatta before Parliament. CORD leader Raila Odinga termed Uhuru's address as mere propaganda given to hoodwink Kenyans into thinking everything was moving smoothly. Here now is part of Raila's speech given earlier today.
The manufacturing sector, Jubilee has failed to deliver a robust, diversified and competitive manufacturing sector by failing to implement the special economic zones, that is SEZs, and free trade areas as planned under the Vision 2030, and that is Mombasa, Lamu and Kisumu. Instead, they have come up with this idea of an inland free port at Naivasha. Wholesale and retail sector. Kenya's large informal and small and medium enterprises sector has not benefited from the programs and policies to formalize the sector and transform it into an efficient, innovative sector with a diversified productive range. The Uwezo Fund, the Youth Enterprise Fund, and the Women's Enterprise Fund have all become part of the Jubilee's failed programs. Many policies and programs simply collapsed under the weight of rampant corruption unleashed by the Jubilee administration. Tourism sector. Tourism is one of the nation's key export earners. The Jubilee administration has presided over its total collapse. The president said all is well with tourism. Yet the number of tourists visiting Kenya has dropped from 1.8 million in 2013 to barely 1 million in 2015. Tourist resort cities that were to be started in Mombasa, in Lamu, Turkana have effectively been abandoned by the administration. And just you read in the Daily Nation of this week, over 10,000 workers have been laid off in the coast hotels over the last 2 months. Financial services sector. Kenya has a relatively well-developed financial services sector. The vibrant banking and capital markets, but collapse looms large. We see wholesale failure and the neglect by the Jubilee administration in this critical sector, which has systemic impact on the economy. The ongoing turbulence with the collapse of banks creeping in and again point to a crisis whose consequences will be felt long after the banks have been shut. The fact that the Central Bank of Kenya today has no board of directors, I repeat, you need to know that the Central Bank of Kenya today has no board of directors. That speaks volumes about the commitment of the government to prudent financial management. You don't have a chairman, but there is no board of directors. So finally, we want to tell fellow Kenyans that what was being delivered is a Jubilee propaganda, not a State of the Nation address. That the nation is ailing, the nation is not healthy, the nation is hurting. Kenyans feel it in their pockets all over the country. Kenyans are an angry lot because a hungry person is an angry person. We would like to tell them, however, that there is a light at the end of the tunnel. They have 16 months to endure before the time for liberation comes. And when that time comes, CORD, as a coalition, will be there to stand with the people of Kenya, and we are fully equal to the task.
On his part, CORD co-principal Kalonzo Musyoka demanded that the Kenyan Electoral Commission be disbanded immediately to pave way for another body to conduct the 2017 polls. Let's listen in to part of his address.
The past 2 electoral cycles have fallen short of democratic standards, thereby subverting the free will of the Kenyan people. This has either resulted in loss of life, social-political conflict, and/or economic regression. While Kenya had climbed from a 0.9% annual rate of growth in 2002 to 7% in 2007 as a result of the NAC initiatives, the post-election violence dimmed our fortunes to less than 1% economic annual rate growth. It is quite clear that democratic, free and fair elections is good for all Kenyans, and Jubilee should not sabotage the electoral reforms. We need to have free and fair elections. We say they do not need to sabotage, because we have, even yesterday, we went to the IEBC, and there again I want to congratulate the Catholic bishops for coming out so strongly and living up to the biblical expectation the church is the salt of the earth. And if the salt loses its taste, the rest of it is meaningless. The Catholic bishops are so clear that they cannot understand how IEBC can conduct the next election. And we must therefore move from here, specifically and with confidence, to tell IEBC to pack and go home. It is abundantly, let's just say that we cannot have free and fair elections without the reforms that we have actually promised under the OKOA initiative, and OKOA Kenya, as we know, was to be implemented through a referendum as required by the Constitution. And we are all set. And yesterday we wanted actually to ask IEBC, which electoral register were you referring to? It is very clear to us. It is so clear that the threshold of 1 million votes was more than met by the signatures that OKOA Kenya initiative presented. This matter is too key to the future of our nation to be dismissed on partisan political ground. But that is what Jubilee has done. Time is running out on this if we are to avoid the curse of bad elections presided over by incumbents defending their seats. I also want to talk on inclusivity, which will be my last subject this morning to all of us. Inclusivity and national unity. The prevalence of ethnic seclusion in public service affairs constitutes the greatest obstacle to national unity, national cohesion, and indeed sustainable development in Kenya today. The mismanagement of ethnic diversity in governance has adversely affected the quality of public service delivery in our country. This has gotten to levels that have never been matched before in our society. A report by the Public Service Commission of Kenya, published on 4th July 2014, for instance, shows that only 2 communities in the country hold a half of the total public service jobs. And here, we are not talking tribalism. We're talking about inclusivity, which is a constitutional matter. The public service payroll, as at 30th June 2014, shows that out of 236,231 civil servants, the 2 ethnic communities accounted for 115,613, or 46% of the public workforce.
Meanwhile, Moses Wetangula, who is a co-principal in CORD, attacked President Uhuru's government performance on matters security, saying Kenyans are feeling insecure everywhere in the nation.
The president painted a rosy picture of a country that is peaceful. Yet this came at the time of the anniversary of the terrorist attack on Garissa University, killing over 100 of our young people. It also came just a month after a brazen attack on our soldiers in Elade, soldiers who were attacked by Al-Shabaab militia. In this area, like in many other areas, the president was reporting progress and not results to Kenyans. We may have bought military and police vehicles. We may have recruited more police officers and increased their pay and improved their working conditions. These are processes. These do not help bring peace. Are Kenyans safer today than they were in 2013? The answer is simply no. A year after the Garissa attack, Kenyans have not been told exactly what happened. We do not know what happened in the attacks in El Ade, or even how many of our young, valued troops we lost. We do not know what steps have been taken to ensure no more attacks happen. This massive failure by the state to give Kenyans security. And what you have learned and heard from the president is that security begins with you. Meaning, if you are quietly sleeping in your house with your family and armed thugs raid and take away your property, rape your family, injure you, security begins with you. If you are driving from here to Mombasa and you encounter highway robbers somewhere in Mlolongo and they take away your car and injure you, security begins with you. That is the answer from the Jubilee regime. Kenyans are reminded that the president has yet to fulfill the promises to constitute a commission of inquiry into the Westgate attack, an attack that brought very, very undeserved attention to our country, and we lost lives.
Our reporter Duncan Khayemba covered the CORD State of the Nation address, and he now joins us live from our city center studios for more on this. Duncan, the speeches seem to paint a very gloomy picture of the state of the Kenyan nation. What do you make of this?
Well, Michelle, it is expected, it's the opposition, and yes, you expected that certainly they are not going to paint a rosy picture to the Jubilee regime. And of course, I'm sure maybe they would say it is what they are mandated as the opposition to provide checks and balances to the government. Of course, as you've said, it's not what you'd expect because certainly to the opposition, there's nothing much to write home about as far as the Jubilee administration is, or the Jubilee regime is concerned 3 years down the line, given the fact that their report is actually coincides with exactly 3 years since President Uhuru Kenyatta was sworn into office. Michelle.
All right, Duncan, and what are some of the reactions that are coming in since that address has been made this morning?
Definitely, when you look at what on social media, the reactions are fast and furious, of course, depending on which side of the divide Kenyans are pledging their allegiance. But we are suspecting before the end of business today, maybe perhaps most likely we'll have a quick rejoinder from the Jubilee because, of course, this address came in very early in the morning. It was live on KTN. Everybody has been watching. When you look at the messages that are going on social media, clearly people are picking reactions from what they were watching on KTN. And therefore, we anticipate before the end of business today, definitely the Jubilee wing will be responding. Maybe we'll be giving blow-by-blow account to the statement by CORD. And of course, I'm sure maybe most of the issues that they are going to touch on, remember that Raila Odinga went heavy on SGR and graft, where he said that there's a clear scheme that Jubilee has inflated the cost of SGR, that is the standard gauge railway, from initially 220 billion to 337 and now 447. And of course, he has said that he doesn't understand why it has been extended from Nairobi to Naivasha, where it will end up in a private person, or rather in private land, therefore saying that there's more that meets the eye on this. Therefore, I'm sure Jubilee will be reacting before the end of business today. Michelle.
All right, thank you very much, Duncan Khayemba, there, speaking to us from our city center studios, giving us more on the State of the Nation address given by the opposition CORD. Moving on, Kitui Governor Dr. Julius Makau Malombe has said that the Kamba community will be building bridges with other communities in Kenya to show up support for the presidential bid of CORD co-principal Kalonzo Musyoka ahead of the 2017 polls.
Sisi tumeshaamua ya kwamba tunataka mtoto wetu ambaye anajulikana Kenya nzima kama mtu ambaye anaweza kuwa rais mzuri sana. aliyekuwa Vice President wa Republic of Kenya, His Excellency Dr. Stephen Kalonzo Musyoka. Tumesema tutasupport yeye, tutafanya vile inatakiwa watu wafanye, hata kwenda kwa jamii nyingine, hata kwenda mahali nyingine, tukazungumze na marafiki wetu na watu wengine ili watupatie support.
You're watching The Weekend at 1. Let's take a short commercial break. We'll be back with more. Welcome back to The Weekend at 1. Let's move on to matters ICC now. And Kenya's ruling coalition, Jubilee, has said the dismissal of the ICC case against Deputy President William Ruto will not change anything in the 2017 election lineup.
Tusikosanie siasa. Let's disagree on political ideals, but let's unite the country. That is what we want. Na Deputy President tayari ameonyesha hiyo, wakusamea wale watu wote ambao walienda huko kutoa false evidence. Na sisi kama Wakenya tunafuata hiyo footsteps ya kusema lazima tuungane, tufanye siasa kwa amani, tusameane na tuweze kuleta nchi yetu pamoja.
Sisi wa Jubilee hatutafuti urais, hatutafuti candidate ya rais. Rais tayari Uhuru Kenyatta ni candidate yetu 2017. Hatuna debate ya hiyo. 2022 candidate yetu ni William Ruto. So mwenye anatafuta ticket kwa Jubilee atafute from 2032 kwenda mbele. Wale wa code wajipange. Mimi naona ya kwamba hata hawajajua candidate yao ni nani. Kama ni Wetangula mtupatie haraka haraka ili tuweze tukashughulikia yeye mara moja kama vile tulishughulikia ule mwingine. Kama ni Kalonzo Musyoka mwenye mlimwambia 2013 mtampatia candidate at this time, mupatie haraka, msidanganye yeye ndio akuje uwanja tushindane na yeye. Lakini sisi upande wetu hakuna malumbano, hakuna fitina, we have made it clear.
Moving on, Kenya's Chief Justice Dr. Willy Mutunga has raised concern about the increasing failure to prosecute those suspected of corruption. The head of the Judiciary says for good governance to be enhanced, Kenyans must understand that the Judiciary needs assistance from other state organs. Addressing a conference by the Institute of Certified Public Secretaries of Kenya, Dr. Mutunga urged all public servants to uphold Chapter 6 of the Constitution that touches on leadership and integrity.
As I see it, the role of professionals in the prudent management of our country, of our county and national resources, is as personal as it is political. If professionals derive their roles from the vision of the Constitution, then they must know that they cannot fail on both the levels that I've mentioned. We know that in all corrupt deals in this country, and in all the criminal work of the cartels, professionals play a major role. The deep governance abyss, or should I say the rampant misgovernance of public affairs in Kenya, has often been attributed to failure by professionals on at least two levels, in my view. Firstly, there have been a gross failure on the part of the professionals to stand on principle in giving advice to those who make governance decisions. Secondly, there are too many professionals who, when they get into the shoes of decision makers, they discard and disregard professionalism and give in to greed and self-indulgence.
And that's all we had prepared for you on The Weekend at 1. Thank you so much for watching. My name is Michelle Ngele from the KTN News headquarters here in Nairobi, Kenya. Good afternoon.